Joe gets migraines, sore throats. Again, it's not COVID, and it's not strep. Axel spent the ER. He spent Halloween night in the ER with croup, which he hadn't had for almost a year. But once school started, he started coughing because of the mask. Oh, thank you, bud. The coughing causes irritation in the airway. The bacterial environment that's caused by the humid and hot moisture in the mask irritates his airway. And so we got to spend Halloween in the ER. These aren't case studies. This isn't research. This is me at home with my kids. This is my kids' medical problems that are now coming from these masks. They didn't have this before, other than Axel. And like I said, he was a year out almost until he started wearing that mask. And considering that President Ron had to remove his mask during his last meeting, maybe he can vouch for some reasons as to why these kids don't want to wear them as well, or why it's uncomfortable or harmful. The last thing I want to tell you guys is that we're not a violent terrorist group, and I feel like we're treated like one. We're just frustrated. We're trying to get points across. We would love for you to listen and maybe make some changes like Jesse suggested, Melissa, Chantel, who got silenced, didn't get to hear the rest of those ones. We're not here to egg your cars and tear down windows and doors. We just want you to listen, and we want you to put our kids' health first. That's all we want. We don't want to be lied to. I think the fact that a letter went out last week that clearly denied the discussion that clearly happened was just a flat out lie to the community. And that did not sit well with a lot of us. I know Max had addressed that he does well with getting back to parents as soon as possible with concerns. I don't think you've checked your inbox recently because I think it's full. There's a lot of emails in there that you haven't got back to us yet. So where am I at here? Your teachers, the parents and students are not being heard because teachers are wanting to quit. Never seen
Crystal,
teachers. Yes.
Time's up. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your comments tonight from our citizens in our community. We do listen, and I do believe you have some valid points also, and there's some things that we got to really look at. So thank you again. Presentations tonight, Superintendent Perez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board. The first presentation is by the both Cabarro Elementary and Savoyetta Elementary. And this evening, honored to bring the principal, Monica Martinez, and staff to present. Welcome.
Good evening, Board President and school board members and Superintendent Mr. Perez. My name is Monica Martinez, and I am the principal at Cabarro and Savoyetta Elementary. Tonight, I'm going to share a little bit about both of our elementary schools. If you can give me a second so I can get my presentation up. All right, sorry about that, little technical difficulties. All right. Our enrollment at both schools. Cabarro Elementary has 190 students and 7 virtual students. Savoyetta Elementary has a total of 27 students. Our school focus at Cabarro are data-driven instruction and standards alignment. The focus area at Savoyetta Elementary is data-driven instruction and school culture. Our why statement for both schools is, we will create a positive learning environment in which students are celebrated and have the ongoing support necessary for academic and social emotional growth. Academic growth is always of the utmost importance, But this year, we are also making social emotional growth a priority. Students participate in social emotional lessons on Wednesdays. As you can see here, students sometimes do yoga lessons. You can find me in the gym on Wednesdays. Here are some staff and student videos that demonstrate what we are learning at Cabarro and Savoyetta.
Can't hear. Try it again, Monica.
Click on share options on top and choose to share the audio.
Okay, give me a second.
Peer review options.
Okay, let's try this again. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have this video here, and just going to talk a little bit about what we do in our third grade PLC. In regards to our PLCs, what I like about our PLCs is we're able to get together as a grade level team, kind of discuss what is working for us, what is not working for us in regards to academic learning. With that being said, it kind of also helps us to make sure that we are following our guide in regards to what needs to be taught in any given quarter, that what standards, what skills need to be taught. Are we meeting those standards and skills? Are we
Monica, I can't
being able to
understand.
acquire
Dalton, can you help her?
related to whatever?
Yeah, I'm getting nothing but static on my side.
Oh, what do I need to do, Dr. Martin?
I believe it has something to do with the recording itself. So
Oh,
yeah, because we can hear you clearly and all that. So it's not coming from your device. It must be coming from the recording itself. So
oh, okay.
Have Carrie do the commentary right now.
Okay.
Don't be bashful, Carrie.
Let
Go for
me, I turned the volume up. Let me see, because I really have some good videos of our students too.
What needs to be taught and mastered by our students.
Nope.
So with that being said,
Okay, well,
Mr. Delton, this is Ms. Daly. I was able to get the video yesterday. I think it was online yesterday, and I was able to view it earlier, and the voices came through clear. So it wasn't the recording.
so would you rather
was
me
a
try to share it, ma'am?
Video.
Why don't you share that one?
the next video.
Well, no, Emily has a file that we
Oh,
got
okay.
yesterday. Delton, can you access that?
I do have the file as well, sir.
Okay,
I'll
I'm
go ahead
gonna,
and try.
Let him try to pull that one up.
okay, thank you.
Because I
No,
want to
we're
hear.
waiting. It was an excellent video. I really enjoyed it. The kids were cute. Oh, just it was.
Thank
I
you.
played it several times.
I don't think mine is producing any sound as well.
Okay, sorry about that. So just a little synopsis of what they were going to share. We had Miss Etheria talking about our third grade PLC meetings. And so she was giving just some examples of what we do during our PLC meetings and how we discuss the standards and how to help students that are struggling. And then we had 2 6th graders sharing about what they like about being back at school and then also what they're learning. And then we had the cutest little kindergartner from Seb also sharing what he was learning and what he liked about being back at school. So sorry that that didn't work out, but that's kind of the gist.
Sorry about that. If you do have an opportunity, and hopefully the videos will play with you, board, to just listen, and you can see how excited the students are being back in school. So sorry about that. And let me continue.
Ms. Martinez, we can put that on your school site on the webpage in case anybody wants to watch it later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let me get to the next. It's not going. Let me see if I can get to the next.
Okay, Ms. Monica, there's a section where it shows the parents participating in the Halloween trunk
Yes.
giveaway or what? And so,
Yes,
I mean, that's a real.
Thank you. I'm trying to get to that, and let me 1 second.
Dr. Martin, I think
That's a clear example of really positive. That's a clear example of positive participation and positive response, and just people doing their getting along together and just doing the best they can. And I was really pleased with that.
Thank you. Dr. Martin, I think you can share your screen if you don't mind. And then yes, thank you. Maybe pass the videos. Okay, and maybe to the next one. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Martin. So sorry about that. The next few slides will show how we are celebrating students at both schools. Here we have our T-shirt art contest at Cabarro. Students competed for the honor of having their artwork displayed on our new school T-shirts. A special thank you to our art teacher, Ms. Woodward, for helping and encouraging students during the T-shirt art contest. And it was a very hard choice, and the students really enjoyed participating in that. Next. Here is our Q1 attendance celebration at Cabarro. Again, we want to celebrate the students for coming to school and working hard and just being at school. So there's a few pictures of the kids. Next. You can see that students with perfect attendance and minimal absences earned a trip to the treasure chest. And they were excited for the little toys and the treats that they got, that they worked hard, that they earned for the first quarter. Next. Students who had perfect attendance in Q1 earned a pizza party with the principal, and the students had a blast. They just wanted to talk and eat and talk and eat. So it was a great reward for them for working hard. Pause. Students earn pause for good behavior at both schools. When a staff member notices that a student is being a good citizen, being especially kind, or following the rules, they give that student a ticket with a paw on it. At the end of the quarter, students get to visit the paws store to trade in their paws for incentives. Next. Here is our Q1 attendance celebration at Savoyetta. Next. You can see that students with perfect attendance and minimal absences earned a trip to the treasure chest as well. Students who had perfect attendance in Q1 earned an ice cream sundae party with the principal, and they enjoyed the ice cream. Maybe ate it too fast and got a brain freeze, but they enjoyed it. And that's what we want. We want for them to celebrate for working hard, for coming to school. Next, here are some pictures of our Halloween celebration at Cabarro. We had Mario and Luigi pay us a visit. We had a fortune teller that day and an M&M, and students were very creative in their costumes. And we had a carnival in the gym by grade level. They had time to go in and earn some fun prizes that day. Next. Because we wanted to keep our students safe and have parents participate in the festivities, we did a trunk or treat activity at Cabarro. Parents parked their vehicles in the parking lot, and students were able to receive treats while showing off their Halloween costumes. A special thanks to Pueblo of Acoma Health and Human Service Division for participating as well. By the end of the parade, the students were dragging their treat bags back to the classroom because we had a great support that day with parents coming and allowing them to see their kid in a safe COVID way. Next. Here are some pictures of our Halloween celebration at Savoyetta. Students also dressed up and participated in Halloween crafts in the gym. And there's the kids showing off their little monsters. Since school culture is one of our focus areas at Savoyetta, we are making an intentional effort to include parents in learning activities. We had a book bingo activity this quarter where parents and students were invited to play bingo and earn books as prizes. Our facilitator, Shelly Bazard from the NMSU Eclipse program, provided parents with strategies for helping their children with reading at home. I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Ballou, our instructional coach, to go over our data for Q1.
Good evening. So here we have our Cabarro Elementary Q1 Illuminate data. And so this is for ELA. The blue bar represents the number of students that are proficient or advanced, and the orange bar represents the number of students that were tested. And so you can see that kindergarten, 88% of our students were proficient or advanced. First grade, 100% of our students were proficient. Second grade, we had 96% of our students proficient. Third grade, 15%. Fourth grade, 19%. Fifth grade, 46%, and then sixth grade, 16% proficient. So for math, school-wide, we had 56% of our students proficient or advanced. You'll see that in kindergarten, 84% of our students were proficient in math. 100% of our first graders were proficient. 83% of our second graders. 36% of our third graders were proficient. 33% of our fourth graders. 69% of our fifth graders. And then 13% of our sixth graders were proficient. Okay, looking at our students at Savoyetta Elementary, in ELA for Q1, we had 70% of our students proficient school-wide. So that means 67% of our kindergartners were proficient, 83% of our first graders were proficient, 67% of our second graders, and also our third graders were proficient, 50% of our fourth graders were proficient, 100% of our fifth graders were proficient, and 50% of our sixth graders were proficient. So moving on to math, this is really exciting because we had 85% of our students proficient school-wide. in our math assessments. So that means kinder first, second, and third, we had 100% proficiency. In fourth grade, we had 50% of our students proficient. Fifth grade, 100% proficient, and then sixth grade, 50% proficient. And I will give you back to Ms. Martinez. Oh, we do have an action plan based on our Q1 data to just come up with a plan for what we're going to do for next quarter to meet our student needs. And so we'll be presenting that later on in the meeting.
I'd like to thank all of the GCCS stakeholders for supporting Cabarro and Savoyetta Elementary schools. Please know that we are doing our best to meet the needs of all of our students. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez and staff. Carrie, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Board President,
Yes, Dr. Guy.
thank you, Monica,
Thank you.
Carrie. Was beautiful. You did a great, excellent presentation, all the way a little glitch, but that's technology for today. And it's really, really exciting to see the enthusiasm of the kids that are there. And that's your baseline information, baseline data. From there, we move on into the subsequent quarters, and we'll be looking forward to your analysis of the data and in determining what it is best that you can do for the kids. And this is your first time back into in-person instruction, and that's a challenge unto itself, as we know. So we totally support you, both in Savoyetta and at Cabarro, and wish all of you well, and all of the teachers there, including Yvette. I thought I saw her there a moment ago.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guy, and thank you, Cabarro and Savoyetta schools, principals, and staff. Presentation B, Superintendent Perez, first
Sir.
quarter student data.
Yeah. President, board, thank you. Last regular board meeting, we had a quick preview of the data that was hot off the press. We just finished the first quarter assessment. So we've had a chance to look at it a little bit closer. We have our instructional coaches here to share. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Sanchez.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Pettis. So continuing with looking at the data on the campus plans tonight, each campus, we're going to highlight the big picture of how they're using Q1 data to prepare for and to drive the interventions and the Q2 instruction.
Come louder.
Oh, here.
So now they're going to, do you want me to start over?
No. Continue.
Okay. So now they're going to be giving you a brief overview of their plans. We're going to start with Grants High School. We have Teresa Butcher to go over the plans for Grants High School.
Oh, Teresa.
Good evening, board president, superintendent, and members of the board. Reina, I was expecting to see a slide.
There should be one there. Hold on just a second. It's not sharing on our side.
Oh, it's not?
No. Go to share. Dr. Martin, I think you're already sharing.
I'm not.
Okay. Don't click the little there.
There it is. Okay. So as you can see, we have a pretty basic outline here based on our Illuminate data. So you can see on the left, our focus forthcoming is going to be spending more time and energy on grade level standards. So this semester, teachers reported that they spent a lot of time filling gaps, and they felt that that contributed directly to the data that we did have. So they intend to, now that we have filled those gaps, move forward with grade level standards. On the right, you can see for ELA, our analysis of the data revealed that some of the issues students may have been having was reading the passages and taking the time to read each passage in a detailed way. So we've determined that we're going to expose the students to those passages before the assessment, not the questions, but the passages themselves. So we've made copies of the passages for the Q2 assessment and encouraged the ELA teachers to find ways to incorporate them into their instruction so that students have that front loading. And then for all of the teachers who are not explicitly math and ELA teachers, we have encouraged them to give explicit, actionable, and written feedback. Of course, we know that learning cycle is a cycle, and part of it is feedback. And so we're working on that explicit, actionable, written feedback. And then also finding ways to address math and ELA standards in other content areas. That is an ongoing choice that we're trying to make on our campus.
Thank you, Teresa. Moving on to Laguna Acoma Junior and Senior High School, we have Mr. Jackie Sanchez and Edwina Trujillo.
I believe Mr. Sanchez is going to take the lead on this.
Are you able to unmute, Jackie?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Board President, Mr. Pettis, and members of the board and community that are listening, thank you guys for this opportunity to represent Laguna Acoma, home of the 2A state volleyball champions. And just to throw this in there as well, these young ladies also had a cumulative GPA of 3.4. So they're not just athletes, they're also academically strong. I just want to throw that in there because every time I get the opportunity to brag about my students, I do. Just like any good leader, we listen to our staff, and Miss Edwina Trujillo said, Mr. Sanchez, you're presenting because I'm new. And so she said, so I'm doing this because Edwina told me to. And we welcome Edwina to the team. She's come from a long line of great leadership. I really highly respect her, and having her on campus has already been changing our school in the last few weeks that she's been here. So what you're looking at is an umbrella of what we're doing at Laguna Acoma. This is something that we're doing school-wide. We're putting word walls, we're doing PLCs, objectives, standards, engagement. We're doing restorative justice practices, examining student work, and attendance. And under that umbrella are the components that we got from the assessment. Looking at math and ELA specifically, we want to expose students to ELA and math Illuminate practice questions. Prior to the assessment, we noticed that some of the students have a hard time understanding what the questions are asking and breaking down the questions. So we're going to teach them how to test. And that was one of the things that Edwina brought to us. One of the first things she said is we need to teach test-taking strategies. In her experience that and as a leader herself, she said if the students don't know how to test, then the data is not valid. So we're going to teach them on how to take tests. Our students take written tests, they take Illuminate, they take PARC, and all these have different components to them. So we're going to make sure the assessments that we're given are not hindered by the way they're tested. Standards and objectives are going to be part of daily lessons as teachers teach in the math and ELA. They're going to make those standards part of their instruction. All content areas, including math and ELA, Ms. Edwina's meeting with the students, the teachers, and where they're examining student work. This has really shown beneficial. We got a lot of new teachers to the district, new teachers to the field of education. And by them seeing that student work is really opening their eyes as to what the students are understanding and not understanding. to identify how lessons connect to ELA and math standards. So in all content area, we're gonna make posters that go in the classroom. So as teachers are teaching whether they're teaching woods, their metals, science, social studies, they're gonna find ways to connect the lessons they're already teaching and how they're connecting to what's going in the ELA and math classrooms. We already know that cross-curricular already happens, but we want the students to recognize that what they're doing in all their classes connect to math and ELA. When they make their connections, we feel that they're gonna be successful when they're taking those assessments. And lastly, ELA and math standards displayed in every single classroom. So like I said, those standards can be posted in every classroom, and they're not gonna be asked to change the standard they're teaching. They're just gonna be asked to recognize the correlation between what they're teaching and what's going on in the math and ELA classroom. Again, thank you guys for this quick presentation. We're excited for this new quarter. We're gonna continue to move forward and make Laguna Acoma one of the best schools in the state of New Mexico. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Next, we have Los Alamitos Middle School. We have Sheena Beach.
Hi, everyone. I am the instructional coach at LAMS, and we have quite a few things that we are brewing at our school. For ELA, our teachers are going to be teaching quarter 2 standards and then embed quarter 1 standards into the daily lessons for continuous review and practice. And then they will be providing differentiated instruction. We also will be instilling or utilizing our study skills to support our resource students. And our intervention classes to reinforce the standards that are being taught and not mastered. For math, we will be teaching quarter 2 standards and provide intervention to fill in learning gaps, and then provide differentiated instruction as well. For our social studies, our social studies teachers will be teaching specific grade level social studies standards, and then embed the ELA standards into their daily expectations. I know that I've been talking about it for a while, but our 8th grade team has came together and they have decided to do a writing project to help reinforce the writing companion and to get our students writing at grade level standards or expectations. And so each content subject will be writing a research project at the end of each quarter. And the first one that completed that was our ELA teachers, to show the process of the writing and to show like how to formulate and reach those standards. We will also, our social studies teachers will also continue to communicate with the ELA grade level teachers. They're doing a really good job in instilling what our ELA teachers are expecting in their classroom by even mentioning them by name, and saying, you know, I'll just use an example, but Miss Lopez's expectations are what for citing. So that was quarter 1 standards. For science, we'll be teaching specific grade level science standards and then also embed the ELA standards into the lessons that fit best. Our science department will be doing continuous science for research projects, and then hosting a science fair exhibit in February. And then again, continue to communicate with the ELA grade level teachers. And then as far as our electives, we're going to be teaching specific elective content, and then again embed the ELA standards and then set expectations for written work that correlates with grade level writing standards, which shows in our PLCs and our ESWs.
Thank you,
And
Sheena.
that's it.
I read some of those research papers and they were awesome. So continue the great work with those. Thank you. Next, we have Milan Elementary. Miranda Barajas will present.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez, Mr. President, Mr. Perez, and board members. Milan Elementary's plan can be summed up with 3 key points: pre-planning, data-driven instruction, and targeted interventions. Every grade level is expected to complete a SMART goal planning template at the beginning of every quarter. This helps the teachers set a tentative plan in place to maximize their teaching time, because we don't want to wait until the end of the quarter to test the standards, because at that point we're out of time and we have to go on with as little remediation as possible. So the teachers take the standards for ELA and math based on the district learning plans, and they set specific dates as to when those standards will be assessed and reassessed using common grade level assessments. Once the standards are assessed, the grade level will fill out the mastery column of the SMART goal template to show how many students have mastered the standard and how many students we still need to focus on. Our data folders go hand in hand with the SMART goal planning template. We have changed our data folders this year to be standards aligned. Each student from kindergarten through 6th grade has an individual folder to graph their results from their standard assessment. This helps the students take ownership of their learning and get immediate feedback. This also helps the student, teacher, and parent quickly gauge where the student needs additional support. And finally, through our PLCs and the MLSS process, we are able to examine student work as a grade level to identify any achievement gaps and collaborate on ways to address those with specific students with differentiated instruction and targeted interventions. Strategic grouping, one-on-one support, after-school tutoring, as well as intense documentation all contribute to our action plans to help students who may be falling into layers 2 and 3 of the MLSS. If any of you have any questions, I will be more than happy to address them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Miranda. Next, we have Mesa View. And Mesa View, I don't know if Jennifer's still on, if she wants to present this. I can do this one for Mesa View. So Mesa View has said their process is simple. First, they continue to have focused and collaborative planning, feedback through examining student work, and reflect on the teaching and the student work. Second, implement test-taking strategies and tricky vocabulary into instruction and classroom assessments. That's one of the things that we talked about as the instructional coaching group, is the vocabulary and some of the mix-ups that the students had because of the vocabulary and some of the test questions. And then third, they have the targeted interventions and tutoring, and they are beginning MLSS as well. We have Mount Taylor Elementary. Dr. Martin, do you know if Mindy is on? I don't think she is. Mount Taylor Elementary's second quarter focus is planning driven with the examining student work with the intention of student mastery of the standards, differentiating instruction and content to support their full inclusion model, and intervention groups focusing on various skill levels of students and observing data to find the student gaps. And so they're data driven as well, and they just implemented a full inclusion model at Mount Taylor Elementary this year. For Cabarro and Savoyetta, Carrie was going to present.
Hello again. And so here is our action plan for Q2. And so we've always looked at data, we've always had data meetings, but through our examining student work protocol, we're following the data-driven instruction model. So basically we're examining student work, well, ideally daily, but in our PLCs, we do it twice a week. We reflect on teaching and learning. We plan our targeted interventions and then also extensions. And I feel like that is one thing that maybe has been left out in the past because we've been so worried about students that need intervention. So we're taking it a step further and looking at, so the students that are already proficient on these standards, what can we now do to extend that and still stay within our grade level standards, but give them something else to do to take them even further. And then we implement those interventions and extensions, assess again, and then the process repeats. And so we're constantly looking at student work, reflecting on our own teaching and student learning, and then coming up with ways to help students, whether it's intervention, reteaching, or planning extensions for those kids that have mastered the standards. And so one thing about our PLCs is that since we're doing it twice a week now, we're able to discuss, ideas for interventions. Did they work? Is there something else we could have done to make students even more successful? And so it's been a really great process at Cabarro and also at Savoyetta to just help our teachers and come together and plan together. And so that's our action plan.
Thank you, Carrie. And Carrie touched on something that's very important. And so I know the title is examining student work, but a lot of the times the discussion does go back to the adult behavior, the teacher and how they're teaching. And so it's a very reflective process, and it's been a very positive reflective process. And I think that's what Mrs. Etheria was saying, was that it is a good one. And that's the feedback that I'm getting from teachers, mostly through email, is that it's a good process for them to reflect on their own teaching and planning. Next, we have Blue Water and San Rafael, and we have Amanda Valdez.
Good evening, everyone. So speaking for Blue Water and San Rafael, after taking a look at our Illuminate data, we also meet 2 times a week with each site for our PLC meetings. Throughout those meetings, we reviewed our Q1 data from our Illuminate assessments, and we made a strategic plan in order to make sure that all standards that were not mastered are still reviewed and readdressed as appropriate, embedded into our calendar of Q2. We plan from our DLP, our Q2 learning standards, for while planning for differentiated instruction learning needs. We utilize a variety of vocabulary, text resources, and SIOP strategies. That was, again, reiterating and hitting on making sure students are familiar with those test-taking strategies and the vocabulary that they were going to see throughout taking the assessments. We have been examining student work to plan daily intervention at our 2 times a week PLCs. The needs that are addressed for common learning skill gaps with groups of students, we reevaluate current interventions and adjust as necessary. So these PLCs are brainstormings, looking at student work and to see how we can address interventions for some students or how to still go deeper and use the time that we have to make sure that we have fully hit that standard encompassing. Next, we utilize Illuminate passages or question types, whether that be for ELA or math, so that we are better targeting standards outcomes to make sure students are fully prepared for their test-taking strategies. Whether it's now that teachers are fully knowledgeable in the standard, but wanting to make sure that they know what that learning outcome looks like and what the goal is truly for that standard for the students. So teachers are becoming more prepared and utilizing the vocabulary and the Illuminate passages. We feel like students are also becoming more prepared using those test-taking strategies. Students become responsible for their learning as they keep track of their growth. As we're holding these PLC meetings to examine student work, we are also having those same discussions with our students and allowing them to advocate for their learning. asking them to turn the questions over to themselves as they look at their grades, as they look at the previous day's graded assignments. So that way they are advocating for their learning. They are holding discussions with their teachers to say where their confusions were or their misunderstandings, or how can they say, I understood this part, but this part was confusing to me. It's really taken them responsible for their learning and put them at the table to go deeper into their meetings while reviewing their work. So lastly, we use formative assessments throughout our lessons to address the needs for immediate feedback, from daily work, daily observations, unit assessments, and then going further into iStation and Illuminate later. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amanda. And last, we do not have a slide, but we have Dr. Y with Early College High School.
Oh, there I am. Yeah, thank you very much. Early College High School uses the same short cycle assessment data and other indicators as other schools. But in addition, we look at other indicators to determine whether we're successful or not. One indicator we look at is our passing rate at the university taking dual credit courses. Last spring, our passing rate was 76%, which was above the state average, but there's still room to grow there. And another indicator that we use to determine how we are preparing students for college is our Accuplacer test rate. And interestingly enough, that rate was also a 76% passing. And what we're finding out, and not only because of this scenario, but in conversations with the university, that the Accuplacer is serving to be a pretty reliable predictor of success at the college level. So how do we improve our success? One thing that we are implementing this coming semester in the spring is that all grade 9 students, our freshman students in the spring semester, will take one course at New Mexico State called First Year Seminar. It's a course, a 3-credit course at the college level that introduces students to the college environment and prepares them for the expectations that they have. Now, we hope that this experience will do 2 things. We hope to improve our passing rate in our courses. And secondly, this course will provide an additional direction and guidance for these students taking it so they can be better prepared and more knowledgeable about their career choices and career pathway. So that's our plan, the way we plan in the short term. What's happening right now is that the end of the New Mexico State semester is coming right up in a couple of weeks. So a lot of students are finishing their courses, and we're in the process of advising them for the next semester. From, again, freshmen will take their first course, sophomores and juniors will be continuing on to the program, and we hope that through quality advisement, we can demonstrate good success. So that's where we are at Early College High School.
Thank you, Dr. Y. Presentation.
Thank you, schools, for that information. Presentation, C-tip and tribal consultation update.
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board. The purpose of this presentation is to give the board an update on some of the meetings with the team Indian policies and procedures and the tribal consultations meetings that have been occurring the last
Mr. Board President, before we continue, I'd like
months.
to comment.
Go ahead, Dr. Guy.
Yes, I'd like to thank all of the presentations. I thought they were very informative. There's a lot of things that I found very exciting to hear, and the development of the instructional leaders that I heard is phenomenal. All of you guys who I knew when you were teachers You've now moved into new roles as leaders of your school. I think that's excellent. I think it's the first opportunity we've had where we have a core group of instructional leaders such as you spending time with the teachers and giving them the necessary support. I'm assuming that you also meet together to share ideas about between schools. And I hope, because I saw a lot of stuff that every one of you guys would probably be interested in sharing with each other and just talking shop. And I think that's really important. There's much that I could comment on, but I think it tells us that we are beginning to really deepen our efforts to initiate a structured, organized plan for doing our DLPs. I love that. So thank you very much, all of you. Welcome back, Edwina.
And I'd like to just make an additional comment. So yes, these instructional coaches meet every Friday, and they have very high level conversations about instruction, academics, assessment. So it's good to hear them. I constantly refer to them as our academic change agents, and I just really appreciate the work. They're a great team, and we look forward to some greater things to come. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Guy.
So the next up is the Indian policies and procedures and tribal consultation update. I believe we have Roseanne. Are you on?
I'll present, Mr. Superintendent. Yes. Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Perez, we've been having meetings with the respective tribes regarding the IPP. So far, we've had 3 meetings completed on June 14th and October 4th. We discussed policy 1 and the procedures under it. And so far, that's the only changes to the IPP that's been suggested by the respective tribes is a change to procedure 4. It's just adding some language to the narrative to clarify the procedure better. On November 9th, we had a meeting with the tribes and discussed policies 2 and 3. This week, a draft will be sent out to respective tribal representatives to solicit suggestions and feedback on policies 4, 5, and 6. On December 6th, the suggestions and feedback for policies 4, 5, and 6 will be discussed, after which a final draft will be created for board approval and tribal concurrence. As Roseanne and I attended Impact Aid webinar earlier this morning, and they discussed important dates and aspects of the Impact Aid application that we need to be we need to focus on. And 2 of them are that the board approval of the IPP has to happen after February 1st of this year, when we're actually well on schedule to be able to complete the IPP by January 31st or before January 31st, 2022, which is the deadline for the Impact Aid application. As far as tribal consultations, the district actually completed the tribal consultation with the Navajo Nation on October 18th. We received the accomplished and signed tribal affirmation form right after our consultation with them. We are scheduled to consult with the Pueblo Wacoma tomorrow, November 17th, and with the Pueblo Laguna on December 10th. of this year. The district worked with tribal leaderships and to schedule the consultation dates that work for all parties involved. And that's the reason why the Laguna Pueblo consultation was pushed to December 10th to accommodate the Pueblo of Laguna request of such date. That's all I have in my that's all I have in my report. I'm ready to address any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Any questions? For Mr. Martin? Okay. That's some items tonight. 7A, consideration of approval for the system replacement upgrade. Your recommendation, Mr. Perez.
Sir, Mr. President, Board, I do recommend that we approve the systems replacement and upgrade.
Okay, I need a motion.
Dion Sandoval, so move.
Need a second?
Emily Hunt Daly, second.
Emily seconds.
Okay, discussion?
Mr. Lee, are you on, or Mr. Maldonado? I
I
think.
believe Mr. Lee is going to take this.
Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee's off-site, so he may have some trouble connecting.
Well,
no, I'm here.
There.
I'm here. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Perez. I've been out of pocket for a while. In your board packet, you have a memo of a substantial amount of expenditures. Most of them are intercom upgrades, however, and those are all utilizing Carissa funds, which we have presented to you numerous times about how we were going to try to spend those from a facility standpoint. There is also a Cabarro septic system replacement that would be expended from SB9 funding. We're asking that you approve the purchase of those expenditures.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Lee from the board? No comments, questions? Okay, roll call. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Dr. Garcia,
yes.
Emily Hunt Daly,
Yes, yes.
Richard Jones, Dion Sandoval,
Yes.
Ron Ortiz.
Yes. Motion carries. Action item 7C, consideration of approval to reallocate state funds at Grants High School and Laguna High School. Your recommendation? Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr. President and board members, I do recommend that we approve the reallocation of these stale funds at Grants High School and Laguna Acoma High School.
I need a motion.
Dion Sandoval, so move.
Need a second?
I have a question before you vote. What do you mean by stale funds? Are these ones that were part of our audit exceptions, or you don't know where they belong?
Motion second.
Wait, you have a motion. You need a second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guy.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I second the motion, Garishambo. Let's talk.
Okay, discussion.
Okay, so now I can discuss, what are these stale funds for? Or where do they derive from?
So, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Perez, in reviewing the activity funds, these are funds that were fundraised by the various classes of each of these high schools. So they're not state funds necessarily in a particular fund of PED. These are funds that were unspent at the end of each of these years for each of these classes. So they've accumulated in the accounts. And as you can see on this spreadsheet here, highlighted in blue all the way back to 2007. For example, the class of 2007 has unspent funds that they fundraised of $3,235.75. And on it goes to total of, when we get to the class of 2020, a total of $54,174.25. Now, the current policy requires that existing funds that are unspent or unused at the end of the class year, the officers of that class are to vote on and determine the use of the remaining funds. Typically, when that happens, for example, the class may determine that they want to leave a legacy gift for the school or transfer the funds to the next class or whatever. But that didn't happen with any of these. And so because of that, and because of the age of these funds, what we're doing is we're asking, it's very difficult for us to go back and find the class officers in order to do that. So what we want to do is clean these up a little bit and then ask the board for a one-time allocation for us to distribute those funds in the following manner. Let me get that up for you just a moment here so that you can see how we want to distribute those.
Steve, in the future, will we notify the class sponsors that they have an allotted amount of money so they could actually spend it on the class? I know there's probably things that they could do that particular year versus, you know, later on in the years, here we are, you know, trying to spend it.
Right, Mr. Sandoval, I think you bring up a great question. We are going to be paying more close attention to this and getting to the school and asking the principals to help us with getting to the class officers so that before they graduate, they're able to make a disposition of whatever unspent funds there are so that we don't accumulate this like this and get in this position. So very good question. So what we're proposing to do is to take, for example, with the Grants High School, they have $54,174.25. And since the years in COVID were very difficult for the classes to fundraise, we proposed allocating a certain amount of those funds to each of the remaining classes, the class of 2022, 3, 4, and 5, to help them jumpstart their fundraising. And in consultation with the principals, these are the amounts that we came up with. The remaining funds of $42,174.25 will be used to distribute to scholarships of $1,000 each distributed to students at Grants High School. And then for Laguna High School, we start with $2,251. Mr. Sanchez has asked us to see if we could roll 500 of that over to the class of 2023 and then the remaining to the senior class in order to help jumpstart them. So that's the proposal in terms of reallocating those existing funds. And to Mr. Sandoval's point, we will be paying closer attention to at the end of each year so that these funds don't accumulate like that. So the board request here is at the bottom to approve the one-time reallocation of these funds from class 2007 to 2020 for Grants High School, and then Laguna Acuma from 2015 to 2020.
I do have a concern. I know in past years, I've had issues with clubs, seniors, especially saying that they didn't know where their funds went, that they had, last time they looked, they had money, and then all of a sudden when they want to spend it, then they were told they didn't have any money. There were other classes or groups or clubs that said the same thing, where did all this money go? And so I know once we do this, there's going to be an enormous amount of backlash from former clubs, former classes, that this was money they fought hard to raise, and now we're just giving it to somewhere else where they didn't even have to go through what they had to go through to raise that money. It just raises a lot of concern, and I know it has been an audit exception for a number of years, but it's hard to give feedback to those groups that are challenging the fact that they weren't allowed to spend their money, or they were told they didn't have any money. And now all of a sudden we come up, Grants High School for 54,000. And then Laguna Acma 2,200. I mean, it's just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, as far as, I know we have to do something with it, but I sure hope we have this under control from this point on.
I may address that. I'm sorry.
Mr. President, members of the board, I just like to clarify that a lot of this, we're looking at this as a cleanup, because this has been going on since 2007. And we realize, I think it would take a tremendous amount of effort and time to go back and research and find the classes of 2007 and sort it out that route. This is very analogous to the state funds that we've been cleaning up from about that same time period at the state, where there was some leftover state funds and federal that were owed to the district, and some that were district owed to the state because of due to, due froms in the federal side. This is a minor version of that. We did discuss several options on how to clean this up, and this seemed to be the most efficient way to get that accomplished. So I'd just like to throw that in for clarification.
I agree with you, Max. I mean, it's a good fix, you know, giving back to the students in the scholarship fund versus the district using it somewhere else. I mean, it's a little too late to go back to the class of 2007 and tell them we have $3,000 of their money. I mean, we can't reimburse it that way. It's a little too late for that, but you know, putting it towards a scholarship fund and fixing it for the future so we don't run into this again. You know, just at the end of the year, get with the class sponsors and ensure that every dollar spent, whether it's, you know, on a dinner for the seniors, something, or even scholarships, you know, leave it up to the class at that point.
Mr. Board President.
Just to be clear. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Guy.
Yeah. Can you go back to the spreadsheet?
Yes, sir. Give me just a moment.
Would you scroll up on LA High School? I'm curious. I see there's a difference in terms of how the two high schools dealt with this. LA High School doesn't seem to have a problem until 2015, whereas Grants High School had it ever since 2007, I believe. What is the accounting? It's the process. There's a set of procedures that are supposed to be developed and implemented. Each high school principal should know, should explain to the sponsors, to the classes, all the requirements, the rules for obtaining money, and then how to expend it, and how to communicate with the schools about this. I don't understand why it's a problem. What was the original reason for the high schools allowing these balances to occur?
Well, I can only speak to when I walked into this position. I'll address Ms. Hunt Daly's concern. We did see that when I came in, and we did hear from athletics as well as clubs that they did not understand or know what their balances were rolling forward from year to year. We have since developed a process in the accounting system where at any given time, a school can, and a club or a sponsor can look up, or we can provide a report of their current balances based on the deposits and the expenditures that they did for that particular year. That took a significant amount of cleanup and time for us to reconcile those accounts. So I did tell, and this was unfortunate, that when I came into this role, I did have to explain to many clubs and sponsors that that because of the that we didn't have a good procedure and process in reconciling what the school or the class sponsor said that they had in their account with what was in their account according to the bank or according to the Vision software, just because we weren't able to tie them together. And because we weren't able to tie them together, I made a commitment to all those folks who were complaining to me, when I walked in about that and their frustration, which I totally understood. So we have since we have put in place a mechanism in their code stream that allows us to directly drill down to that particular group, that particular club, and give them their current balances as things were made deposit. There was a lot of issues on the school side that were delaying items, and then there's some issues on the accounting side. So as we migrated through these last couple of years with the help of our auditor, we've been able to identify a solid process. And moving forward, starting with this year, because we've identified specific account codes and general ledger codes that allow these clubs and allow these classes to see exactly where they are at any given time, they'll have more information and the ability to make decisions based on that. So going back to Dr. Guy's question, I will say that, so it's not uncommon that classes would not fully exhaust what they have spent in a year. I go back to when I was in high school, way back in the black and white days, when we raised money and we weren't able to exhaust it. Our class left a legacy gift for the school, some kind of a gift, a fountain, a senior square, whatever it was, in order to exhaust these funds. And what we want to do moving forward, once we're able to clean this up, is to work more closely with the senior class sponsors and the principals to ensure that they have a process in place that helps that class make a determination, whatever balance is left over, how they want to exhaust those funds. And so we don't want to run into this situation again. So that's our plan moving forward. I sincerely hope that you understand that I can't address whatever the issues were back in the past, but moving forward, I am committed to making sure that we have a solid process, that everyone who needs to be informed has the information that they need, and they can ask any question and drill down. I'm happy to present them with any backup or any source documents, whatever it is, to show exactly where things are. That full transparency is very important to me. Does that answer your question, Dr. Cole?
Mr. Board President, Steve, when it says a class of 2018 or 19, is that just a single, is that the class itself and the sponsor for that class, or is it the aggregate of multiple clubs?
No, the club and athletics are completely separate. These are just whatever that class raised for the everything events that class does, from prom to whatever it is that they decide to do. So it's just for that particular class. It does not include any club or other sponsorships at all. They have a completely separate account. So this is only so what that class raised for themselves.
So every effort to raise funds has an associated line item account.
That's correct.
Correct. So actually, this is no different than any others. It's just that this is one. Now, do any of the other clubs or efforts to raise funds have similar problems?
No, because those funds roll over to the next year. So let's say I'm the bowling club and I raised $5,000. And this year I only spent $3,000 and I have a carryover of $2,000. That'll roll over into the next year into that club as it continues in sort of in perpetuity. But because these officers leave the school and that class is sort of closed, we have to exhaust those funds or make a determination before those officers leave on what they're going to do with the remaining funds.
When are you going to do that each year?
When, I'm sorry, was your question, when will I be
Are you going to
doing
do that in May or April or what?
I'm hoping that by April, I'll sit down with the class sponsors and give them their balances and find out what their plans are for expending the remaining items for the year, and then whatever is left over, come up with a plan for how they're going to exhaust that fund, either by rolling that over and gifting it to the next class or by leaving some sort of legacy gift or a scholarship of some sort. That is really up to that class and those class officers to make that determination. But I will help to coach them through so that we exhaust those funds moving forward.
Yes, we need to provide whatever assistance we can with those classes to ensure that they don't we don't run into this again. But thank you very much. I understand it now. It looks as though the LA High School did not have any real issues. I'm puzzled why I don't see any efforts to raise funds in those preceding years of from 2001 to 2014, but that's just an aside. And I see in 2015 is 522 all the way to 2020, which is explain that. Why do I see it 415.94 in paren?
That is because that was a deficit. And then they raised enough to cover that deficit and create a zero balance.
Jackie has a comment.
Jackie, are you on? Do you want to make a comment?
Yes, sir. So the reason why traditionally in the past, Laguna Academy doesn't go far back as Advanced High School did, is because they traditionally rolled over the money automatically before Mr. Maldonado was. So I asked that same question, why do we not go that far back? And they traditionally,
I don't understand what you're saying.
They traditionally passed.
Mr. Sanchez, you're really crackling there. Your sound is really crackling.
What he's saying is that the classes from the previous years at Laguna Academy have always exhausted their funds and either that or rolled it over into the next class. That's why you see those zeros. And so I think that they don't raise as much, but what they do raise and what they don't spend, they either exhaust the funds at the end of the year or they've decided to roll that over. So he did ask that question when I gave him this information previously.
Mr. Perez or Mr. President, a question, Steve. I know we talked about this in going over the audit exceptions, and I know that this has been an exception for a great number of years. And I know you've tried your best to remedy this situation, but it's still happening as late as 2020. How people overspend what they have in their budget. That's like the old joke where it says, I have to have more money. I still have checks in my account. So I don't know how they can overspend it. And then 2021, we're still doing it. And that's just a couple of years later. So I understand, like I said, this is exceptions that occurred for a long time. And there has to be something way back when you came on that we weren't doing to help remedy this situation. But because I know from a number of audits that this has always been a problem area. But I just, I understand at all, but I just want to be prepared for when this gets out to the public, because this is public record, that the parents of these students are going to come back at us and say, You're just taking the money that we raise as parents for our students and giving it to somebody else. Just be prepared.
Mr. Board
Thank you.
President, I think the explanation was clear. I don't recall it being mentioned as an exception in the past. Mr. Steve, has it been mentioned in the past?
No, what she's referring to is the cash reports and the cash reconciliations. Because these amounts have been on the books and are true up with the money that we have in the bank, that has not been an issue in terms of reconciliation there. So it's not been an audit finding, but the auditors do help us identify where we could do a better job of keeping things clean and moving forward, and taking those class funds and reinvesting them into the school itself so that they're not spread out among other things that they were never intended for. And that's how I look at this, is we're reinvesting these funds into the next generation or the next class. And so.
It was not an audit finding in previous audits?
No, absolutely. Not this particular issue, no.
Okay.
The audit findings that she's referring to have to do with what we had with the PED and those items not.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, this is unrelated to that. Okay, thank you. Mr. Board President, I'm prepared to vote on this.
Okay, roll call.
Dr. Guy Shambo.
Yes.
Dr. Guy.
Oh, yes.
Emily Hunt Daly.
Yes.
Richard Jones. Dion Sandoval.
Yes.
Ron Ortiz.
Yes. Motion carries. Superintendent's report, Mr. Perez.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Board, on the, do you know that the toolkit is constantly being revised by the state? The latest, I just want to make everybody aware of, is the test to stay, play, test to stay in school. It's an effort that we're looking forward to. We're excited that there's another method to keep our kids in school when we are experiencing the positive COVID cases. This test to stay basically means that rather than having the full 10 days quarantine, there's a pathway out according to this toolkit. Is there's a 1, 3, and 5 day test, a COVID test. If taken and getting three negatives, then that person is able to come back to school or back to work. That's the essence of it. If you would like to look at details, we do keep the both the state toolkit and our district toolkit on our website. So just wanted to point out that change that we just received since our last board meeting. The other
well, before you go on, Mr. President, Mr. Board President, all I see on this, it says test to stay and play. Have we discussed this with the principals yet?
Yes.
Okay, help me to understand it much more clearly.
Okay.
Explain it again.
So, okay, so the before this came about, if there was a positive, met the criteria for a positive case of COVID, a student or a staff member must have quarantined for 10 days. Okay, and there was no wiggle room with that. You must quarantine for 10 days. With this new version, they modified it so that a person who is tested positive can take a COVID test on day 1 and on day 3 and on day 5. And when they've taken all 3 of those tests and all 3 have come out negative, that person on that day 5 is free to go back to work or free to go back to school or free to go back to the athletics. So it's an avenue to not have to stay out of school or stay out of work for an entire 10 days. What it does create is a lot more testing. Our our health department, our GCCS nursing department, health department, and Sonia Hernandez are working to make these tests more available, because with this option, we expect that we may have more tests being needed. So they're working to make this test available at the school sites, in which they will have a 1 hour result. And you take the test and you get the results within an hour. So that'll make it a lot more doable. So on day 5, if you're taking your third test, you don't have to wait very long. You can wait for an hour and to find out that what your results are, whether or not you can come back to work or back to school.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A question, Mr. Pettis. Okay, these tests, I know that in some places, like at Walgreens, they have this rapid testing, but the people that are doing the regular testing are saying that these are not accurate. These sold over the drugstore counters is not accurate. So if these tests are being administered by our health department and the results are coming back within an hour, then are they accurate?
Well, these are.
Does it take plan?
I couldn't speak to the accuracy. They have been vetted through the state. They're acceptable and approved by the state. It's a little bit different than the over-the-counter Walgreens version. These have to be administered by a trained person. So the health assistants at every school site will have to go through training to provide these tests to staff and students.
So is that going to be, you're saying that's going to also be accessible to staff members that maybe had a positive exposure? They take a test and they find out in an hour that they are negative. Doesn't give much time. They usually, my understanding is symptoms, up to 5 days period to occur when you're near a positive exposure, or you experience a positive exposure. It takes 1 to 5 days to show symptoms. So how does this test accuracy in an hour?
Mr. Lee, are you on there? Do you have some more detail on that? I know that sometimes the incubation period is up to 5 days. I know it's not a 100% system, but it's just another mechanism to get us back into. And
I understand.
That's part of the.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Part of the logic is the 135 days in itself. You know, so if you test once, you're negative. You test twice, you're negative. The incubation could still be going on, and on day 5 you test and you might be positive. So that it's another layer of trying to know who has COVID positive and who doesn't.
I understand it now. Thank you.
Okay.
And next up, the next item I just wanted to share is through the Veterans Day this year, there's a team of administrators that talked about erecting a flagpole for the administrative compound here. So just want to let everybody know that we will be pursuing that. And we're talking about possibly having a memorial, veterans memorial of some sort here at close by central office, but it's going to start with the American flagpole. So just an update and to let you know, once again, we felt compelled to do something of this sort because of Veterans Day and honoring our veterans. So just a little update on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. This announcements are there for you to look at. Future agenda items, get with me or Mr. Perez. I need a motion to adjourn tonight.
Garishambo motions.
Emily Hunt Daily, so moved.
Emily, you want a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Roll call.
Dr. Garishambo,
Yes.
Emily Hunt Daily,
Yes.
Richard Jones,
Yes.
Dion Sandoval,
Yes.
Ron Ortiz.
Yes. Meeting adjourned at 7:33. Thank you, everybody, and good night. Have a good evening.